Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and we're back with another preview, this time for Floe, by Pika Games and designers Henry Audubon, Yoma, and Johnny Pack.
So in Floe, we are these adorable, heroic creatures accompanied by our very trusty and just as equally adorable familiars, where we're going to be embarking on these incredible adventures, sailing this icy land, gathering resources, and then potentially going into the caves to battle out some of the monsters that are in there and come back with some crystals. Then we're going to need to warm back up. So we're going to head back into town and spend our spoils. We're going to be able to spend this on things like dwelling upgrades, equipment to help make our travels and adventures even easier, and then maybe meeting some of the locals who may also send us on additional quests. All of these things are going to give us potentially bits of points here and there. Whoever has the most points by the end of the game will be the winner.
Now, as you can see from the table presence of this game, there are a ton of things that you can get done, but I want to break it down to the two basic key areas of the board. The first is this exploration area where you're going to be traveling through the icy islands in order to collect resources. Now, you're going to track those resources on your player board, and when you feel like you have enough, you're going to go into the village to spend those resources to get some tools that are going to help you on your adventures and on your battles in the caves, which will come back to. You can meet some villagers which are going to give you some bonuses or some, as Maggie mentioned, some secret objectives to help you get victory points. And you can build buildings against your player board which are going to help you build an engine for your familiar to trigger additional bonus supplementary actions on your turn. But there's a key resource in this game that works in the opposite way, and that is your warmth. Now, you need to keep your character warm because in order to travel through the icy islands, you're going to have to spend warmth, and once you're out of warmth, well, you can't travel any further. And at that point, you do need to go back to the village in order to collect heat through meeting different people in town, or by going to the healer, which is going to give you back a significant amount of warmth. Now, victory points are few and far between in this game. In fact, the first person to reach 6 victory points is going to trigger the endgame, and then the only thing that matters at that point are the secret objectives that everybody has hidden up their sleeves, and we're going to add the points from there. The person with the most points will win. But how do you get points in this game? Well, in the beginning of the game, you're not collecting a lot of points. You're simply building your character up, you're upskilling your character, you're getting tools and potions and treasure chests and all these things that are going to help you along the way. And then you're going to use all of that energy and build up to really go into the caves if you want to fight creatures which are going to help you scrape together some victory points, or you're going to work at building up your resource track so that you can unlock these flow stones. If you unlock these flow stones and you're able to place them out in a shrine area on one of these icy islands, that's also going to give you a victory point. You've got 4 resources, so you can do that 4 times. That's going to get you 4 out of the 6 victory points that you need to trigger the end game. And the final thing that I want to mention mechanically is your familiar, because your character is going to either be heading out to the icy islands or the village, and depending on which one of those you choose, your familiar is going to be able to do a supplementary action that sometimes can even give you an entire other action in the village, or if you're out exploring, might be able to pick up those resources that you're not able to reach as your character. And speaking of reach, the players are going to be able to unlock these new land pieces by turning them over and giving us new icy islands to explore, and also unlock these new locations that could give you ongoing benefits in the game or large one-off benefits, as well as these different types of encounters that can give you many objectives to try and achieve throughout the game to get bonuses. But that's enough about the mechanics. Now let's talk about how we felt playing the game.
So with this game, the original idea was to try and recreate some of those adventure, like action-adventure type games. And if that is the case, this nailed it.
Absolutely.
Spoiler alert. This is such a rich adventure-like experience, which is interesting because actually from a narrative point, you're not actually reading lots and lots of text, but it's very, very clear as you're kind of going through the game, the journey that your character is going through and the pathways that it's choosing to yeah, go down.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. There's no storybook, but it feels like you're creating your own adventure. You're creating your own story. And it does that through such a sense of discovery. In this game, every time we sat down at the table, I felt excited about what I was going to uncover because there are so many hidden little goodies throughout this game. One of our friends just kept referring to loot. I can't wait to get some more loot because a lot of the resources that you're going to be spending are going to give you access to a number of different fun benefits. For example, there are 3 items that you can choose from that you can equip to your character that are going to give you benefits, but then if you're able to upgrade them, they're going to give you even more benefits to take into the cave when you're fighting. Or sometimes you might find a key and then you might find a treasure chest.
I love that. The way that that's been implemented on the board of the whole, like you have these little sort of switches. So it's like you switch it to say, well, actually, I've got a chest and I've got a key. And once I've got both of them, I can actually unlock one of these wonderful chest. I've opened up the chest.
And that's just so cute because it gives you the feeling of finding those things. You're like, oh, I found a key. That key by itself is not good for anything. But now I found this chest, and then I get to find, which is kind of luck driven, but in the funnest sense of the word, what's going to be under there. And then within that card, it even gives you a choice of the benefits you're going to take. And that is a similar theme that plays out in lots of different places in this game. So you might find crates out when you're exploring. You could find a crate and then you don't know what the bonus is going to be. Here it's a gem, but it's like, oh, I found a crate and I don't know what's going to be in there, but you're drawn to those things in this game because there's just a sense of fun about it. Likewise, the potions. The potions are always going to give you some kind of benefit for when you go into the caves to battle. And again, you don't know what those are going to be, but it's fun to find a potion and then to reveal what it is, add it to your player, equip your player. It has that feeling, this game, of those those old video games, or probably new video games too, where you have a backpack on and you're just like collecting stuff as you're going through and you're like, oh yeah, throw that in the backpack.
Filling up that inventory and just going, oh, just you wait, I'm ready now. I'm gonna go to those caves, or I'm gonna go and do this.
And so the first half of the game really has that sense of discovery, of building up your character, but at the same time, the way the exploration of the icy islands are also going to give you that sense of discovery, because most of the map is not uncovered when you start the game. You don't know what the 4 locations are going to be that are going to be one in each of these 4 areas, and they offer significant benefits. And even when they turn over, you're going to be populating the different islands and deep sea areas with more goodies, more like resources that you can pick up. And so everywhere that you turn in this game, there's just these surprises, and it's delightful.
It really is. It's like this, as you said, it's like the word discovery is probably the key word, because not only are you discovering land and there's these resources, but yet there's so many elements of like, what is this going to be? And delight. And it's just, it works so well and it's so effective. And another thing that adds to this incredible world building is the artwork, the actual literal world that has been created with the stunning artwork of Andrew Bosley. It is just, this is a game that as soon as I saw, I knew nothing about the game. And this is probably, we're going back, like a year and a half
maybe
or so?
2 years, And
I just saw the art, like the cover artwork, and I'm like, I want it. I don't know what this is, but I want it. It looks adventure-y and it looks adorable and just so, and it delivered.
Yeah, but it's not just cute. It's cute in the sense that it's really fitting with the world that they've created. So it all fits together so nicely. So it's not just a little creature, but these creatures look like they are geared up to go on an adventure, and they're just adorable. And then the size difference of the miniatures, where you have the larger characters and then you've got the little familiars, and all of the sculpting of the miniatures is absolutely incredible. It makes me want to pick up my paints and get back into painting, because they're just super, super cute. But even the artwork of the village, and this isn't even final, this is a prototype, but the artwork that's in the village and on the cards and everything, it's just, it really draws you in.
The atmosphere that's been created and the almost like the energy of it, it's like, it's got this sort of fairly positive, fairly exciting, adorable, but heroic and so I can't help but just smile when I'm playing it, because there's nothing that feels feels, or even when you go into the caves, it's like, ooh, it's kind of exciting. It doesn't feel like, oh, this feels like awful. And I'm like, it's just, everything is just so delightfully fun and engaging.
Now, my biggest fear, of course, looking at a cute game is always, is this game going to have tension, and is it going to have substance from a mechanical perspective? And I'm so excited and delighted to report that this is a fantastic game to play. If you like competitive tension, this game has it. And that's the issue with a lot of adventure games. They tend to be cooperative, or they tend to be like dungeon crawling style cooperative games that are just thematically not our thing and mechanically not competitive enough to give us that satisfaction. This, my friends, is competitive.
Yeah.
And there's so many mechanics that go into this. I'm going to quickly run through some of them. But the resource track is really interesting because as you start the game, you only need to get one resource in order to go and spend that resource in the village, because you always need to spend the entire amount that you have of a single resource. So it has to be at the top of the track. But as you play the game and as you are going to the village, the top of the track is going to extend. So the first time it only costs you 1 pearl, for example. The second time it's going to cost me 2 pearls. The third time it's going to cost me 3 pearls. And so the goalpost keeps shifting, and through as the game progresses, it gets harder and harder to take those village actions.
And it's just so, like, it's such a delightful tension of this whole, oh, sometimes it's like, which action am I going to take? I really need to take that action. I don't have enough resources, so where am I going to find them? And it's like, oh, they've actually already been depleted, so I need to go and explore some land in the hope that I'm going to find some, some stuff. But the other thing is, when you do go and explore those lands, the tokens in those lands tend to be more powerful. So a lot of times you get double of one resource. So it just becomes so, I just savor those moments so much.
And because they get increasingly expensive to spend, then you might think, well, wouldn't you kind of dilute your actions by going to each of them in balance, if that makes sense. So you do them and don't ever make one too expensive, but then at the end of the tracks, you're trying to extend the tracks and get them all the way to the end, because that unlocks your flow stones. And as I mentioned in the quick overview of how this game works, the flow stones are going to be worth 1 victory point each if you can get them to the top and then release them into one of these shrine spots along the boards, along the islands, which is an additional bonus action. And so 4 points right there are up for grabs in a game that is a race to 6 points. So those are really important, and it's really, really hard to do because each time the goalposts are shifting.
And just to go no further, then the point scoring is so tight that getting a half a point, which is this little token here. So that little trophy statue is a half a point. You even have a tracker on your board. It becomes so valuable. So there's a couple of places where you might be able to just get like half a point here or half a point there for defeating, this monster. And so you would just go, I got half a point. You track it there. When you get another half a point, you kind of close it off, and that's a whole point. That becomes like those little scrapings of like a little point here, a little point there.
So important.
So important.
So important.
And so good.
And so the other thing I want to talk about is the warmth track. It's important because it allows you to move. So when you're moving around different islands here, you can just walk over to another island through the shallows, but every step you take is going to cost you 1 warmth, and you have a limited amount of warmth. But as you go throughout the game, especially when you go to this tavern, you're able to remove more of these blocks, and you kind of need to do that anyway because you need to drop off those blocks in different locations to get benefits. But one of the key things is it extends your warmth track, allowing you to then fulfill it more so that you can go out and go further and spend more time in the ice. So that is really clever, but also the way that the rondel works here for the village actions is also really interesting. So if Maggie wanted to go out here, she would get 1 warmth because there's 1 villager at that location. After she takes that warmth, she has to move these villagers around the rondel. So now there's 2 in this location, enticing people to go here to take those two, and then they would spread out these villages again. So it does create this dynamic of making it slightly more interesting to go to different locations at different times. And speaking of the village, one of my favorite village actions is the action that you take when you spend wood, because you get to build another one of these houses that are always variable because they consist of a top piece and a bottom piece, and these piles are shuffled. And when you build a new one of these, you're going to build out this personal village that acts as a little tableau or engine builder for your familiar, because when your main character goes out into the village to take an action, you then can use your familiar to trigger the top of your houses or the bottom of your houses, and that's going to allow you to get more resources or convert resources for other things, get more warmth, upgrade your character. And we haven't even spoken about upgrading your character because your character has a set of skills, and these skills are going to give you an asymmetric power or ability that's going to travel with you throughout the course of the game. But as you upgrade that, it's going to get more powerful. And in fact, once you get to the 4th level of your first skill, you're going to get half a victory point, which is fabulous in this game. But you also can then move on to a second skill set if you want, which is going to give you a second bonus asymmetric power. So that's a lot of fun, and all of the different characters in the box have different skills to explore.
I love that. And I love, obviously, exploring, like playing different games with different characters and going, oh, what will my journey be like if I've now got these abilities? I'll talk a little bit about the monster battles, so like the caves, which you can access through different points in the icy islands. Now, this is interesting because we don't usually enjoy combat in games, and a lot of adventure games seem to be just like endless combat, and it's just you're just fighting, and you're here. It's been really streamlined to the point where you are using, so as you're kind of making your way through the caves, yes, you have the different monsters that you can encounter, and they increase in difficulty, and you have this sort of tracker of how many dice. So we all start with just being able to use 2 combat dice as part of the battle. Obviously the dice will have different different kind of elements. Some of them are going to be critical rolls, some of them are actually magic, so there's a whole thing of how you can spend magic in terms of spells and things. Some of them are going to be stealth, and then actual hits that you're going to be able to do. The other thing is, obviously, the monsters are going to attack back, so the actual rolls and how they attack is very streamlined, but it's also not too punishing, in that if you kind of go in there and you're engaging, you may have collected some potions along the way that can help you, but if you don't manage to defeat the monster and you still have enough warmth, you're allowed to still continue. So you're still kind of allowed to go on. You don't get the spoils for having defeated the monster, but at least you get to kind of progress on that track, and that progress is saved, even if you then sort of go back and do other sort of actions in town.
And I've had entire games where I haven't gone into the chambers of the caves at all, no battling whatsoever, and I've still managed to win the game. So it is an optional adventure that you can take. If you do go through that adventure, it does get more, you get more and better rewards towards the end of the chambers of the caves.
There's lots of actual loot to then
there
gain
is lots of loot. So, if you are going to go cave strong, it makes sense to equip yourself with things that are going to help you with battle. So I love that you can pick and choose your path in this game, and that different strategies always end up in a very tight battle at the end, because my favorite thing about this game, and the reason why it has so much tension, is because this game ends when someone gets to 6 victory points, as we've mentioned. If you're the first person to get there, you get half a victory point to give you that slight edge as a bonus for being the first person to hit it. And then the only thing that scores are the secret objective cards that you can have multiple of, that have different conditions that are going to give you victory points at the end of the game. And then it's the person with the most points. But the pace of this game is interesting, such that in the first half of the game, no one's getting really any points, because you're discovering things, you're building up your character, and the points are all heavily loaded into like the final quarter of the game, where your tracks are at the top, the resource tracks, and you're placing these flow stones when you're at the end of the cave, and you're getting half points of the battles. And so what happens in this game is, at some point, someone starts edging ahead with points, and everyone's like, hang on a second.
Wait a second.
You're at 3 points.
Endgame's gonna get triggered.
And then it suddenly escalates, and the tension then is like, oh my goodness, now I really really have this pressure to push myself to get as far up that track as I can, and it just works really beautifully. It's very balanced, different strategies. We had a game, our last game was a 3-player game where we ended on one person on 10, the other person on 10.5, the next person on 10.5, and because the 0.5 is meant to be a tiebreaker, and then the winner had to be decided by the second tiebreak.
Yeah.
So just a really close game. It's always been quite close, and that to me just signals that, you know, there's obviously been a lot of play testing
with also very different strategies, so going on very different paths. I'll say, even though, you know, all those different strategies, it feels incredibly thematic. I do feel completely invested in whatever little pathway I'm going down, and even the little bits of flavor text that they've added here and there, you can skip it. You don't have to read it if you don't like kind of reading that stuff, but it's actually such a beautiful detail. Like it actually just adds that little bit of flourish, and I absolutely appreciate
the writing is quite good.
Really,
it's very quirky, and there's just enough of it that, you know, the thinker myself, not like at all bored by the narrative.
But even
in
the
this
locations,
game.
So the locations that you can like discover, they have their own little flavor text, and it's like, now I really want to go visit. And so it's like, you kind of want to go visit, and you need to have unlocked these little cubes to put them there, which means that you need to have spoken to people in town, which maybe they're the ones that have told you about, like, there's this amazing place over there. You're like, oh, I've heard of it. I really want to go. I just love all the connections that as a themer I can make that make this for a really rich thematic experience without having to read, you know, lots and lots of text.
I can't not mention the Council of Peacocks. It's my favorite location, and it makes me laugh every time that it's like you're just going to go visit this one island that's full of peacocks. The council, anyway,
love it.
Love it. And so player count wise, let's talk about that. The only thing that we'll say on player count, obviously the solo mode is not available yet. This is a prototype form. They will have one, but it's not ready for testing, unfortunately. Maggie's very excited about that.
I'm so excited for this.
But we did get to play it at 2 to 4 players, and this game, I would say the first thing to note is that it takes a little while to get into the rhythm of the game. The main reason for that is because of that supplementary or secondary familiar action, and like any game that has a second action for people, it can get a little burdensome, and then the game time can blow out. But what we found is by the time we got to the second or third game with someone, everybody was onto it. Everyone knew what their first and second actions were going to be, and the time got cut down significantly. The one thing I will say from a multiplayer perspective is that when there are 3 or 4 players in this game, it's quite hard to get resources. It feels more punishing because there's no scaling for the number of resources that are out in the islands from a 2-player game to a 3 or 4-player game. Again, this is a prototype, so I'm not sure if they'll tighten that up a little bit, but when Maggie and I are just playing by ourselves, it feels so abundant in resources that we don't really need to compete for them, and we don't really need to go and do other things like maybe go to the caves because there's not enough resources lying around. So just something to think about in terms of the scaling. It doesn't make it a bad game at 2, it just makes it feel like a different game at 2.
It felt more relaxed because you're like, oh, okay, well then I can just kind of settle in to do this. Whereas at the higher player counts, when you go, oh, we've used up all the resources there, we do have to now go into the caves, because the caves do have like a much more bountiful source of stuff.
Yeah, in a 3 or 4 player game, I felt like I had to race across to the other side of the island where someone was about to turn over one of these tiles so that I could get in on those resources. And if I was too far away, I was probably going to miss out entirely.
There's that resource of like the caves have this crystal, and there's one of the whole locations in town is just to convert crystals into all sorts of different things, even points. And so that's why I think at the higher player counts, there's way more incentive, and sometimes you're actually going to be forced to go to the caves to get some stuff.
Yeah, so we'll summarize with 2 things that we hope to see for the prototype. Not necessarily negatives, because this is a prototype. The first thing is a better player aid, or at least a player aid, I should say, for the players' actions. And we fully expect that they will have one of these, but it is a bit confusing at first to get your head around what you can do with the familiar if you're doing a certain action with your character. And so the familiar actions are probably, it would be useful to to have some kind of guide for those. I have no doubt that they will have one of those, but we'll be looking for it. And the second thing is, what do we want for this game? We want more content. We want more content, and I think that just speaks so highly of what we thought about this game. It has such a childlike wonder to the discovery process, and because of that reason, I know that this game is going to come with envelopes and additional skills you can unlock and new locations that you're going to find, and you're going to be finding out more and more about this world that has been created.
The prototype that we played was fairly static. It's like you have, you know, a version of kind of like what the main kind of base experience is going to feel like, but the actual experience of playing through the game is going to be unveiling, and things are going to be revealed and unlocked over time, which I think is just adds to the whole experience even more.
But I am just so excited for that, and it's very rare when Maggie and I go through a lot of games, and it's rare that, you know, because there's always new games for us to play, that we're kind of looking back and longing for an experience. And in this case, I'm sad that we've reached the end of the new content. I am really, 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 really looking forward to getting it back to the table in final form, and there is we can't speak more highly of this game. It's fantastic, and we think so many of you are really going to enjoy it. So if you enjoyed this preview, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now. Bye.